Dear Terry, thank you very much doing this interview with us. To start with, can you please describe shortly who you are, where you live, what your family status is, so that we have a rough picture of who you are?
Sure. First, my pleasure, of course, to be with you. Very nice to see you, Rosmarie. And I am a woman, 63 years old. I live back in the United States now on the East Coast and recently moved back from Zurich. Before that, I spent, I would say, more than half of my adult life living outside of the United States. So my perspective is much less American than most because my experience has taken me to a lot of other places. And if it weren't for the fact that my husband's father now is 92 years old, my own mom is 86, we need to be a bit closer. Probably we would still be living in Switzerland. We are also extremely happy here, and this puts us closer to our son who is in New York as well. I spent my career in mergers and acquisitions, having done my schooling in art. Clearly it was my education in graphic design that qualified me to do mergers and acquisitions in the entertainment industry. But at that time, it wasn't easy to do graphic design. You didn't do everything on a computer. You did everything manually. And I was working to pay for school. That was with a consulting company. And my career in that respect was really taking off. That's really just the lane I chose. I met my husband, who we've been together for over 30 years. I met him in London, as a matter of fact. So all of my family were very relieved that I moved to London to work for United Artists and married an American man. We have one son. He's 28 years old. I have two sisters, and lucky, like I said, that my mom and my husband's father are still alive and very present in our lives. And other than that, I'm a child of the world, I'm interested in life, in people, in relationships, in art, in being of service, mostly of growth, I would say.
Very interesting. So you have brought a lot of aspects from two different worlds together.
I do. I feel very fortunate for that. And I think that having been able to access the very creative side of my brain during the entirety of my executive career was actually a really good thing. I think, first of all, women in general in management and leadership roles are a little bit better than men. And most social psychologists will agree with me. So I don't mean it in a sexist term. It's partly training, it's partly socialization, and it's partly just the natural way in which we learn to interact. But I think creativity in mergers and acquisitions is actually very important because combining very big companies and enterprises requires a lot of dedication to relationships, to understanding what is motivating different people, to a bigger picture of what the end result will be and how it will benefit everybody. I think that the underpinnings of creativity in the way we communicate helps us get a lot done very effectively.
I completely agree. So if your friends would describe you, what would they say about you? What kind of person are you?
Well, I'm blessed with a lot of really good friends. In fact, I would say in many instances, I'm closer with my friends than my family. And I think that that's true of a lot of people. I like the saying, friends are the family you choose, because they don't come with the same baggage. So my friends would say about me that I am kind, I'm firm, so I am not so easily influenced. I'm sure they would say generous, because that's very important to me. I feel, it's not what we have, it's what we give. they're on their deathbeds, embracing the love that they enjoyed in their lives.
Nice.
So, that is important. They'd say I'm very energetic. I do a lot of things at once. They would say that I am creative, and I would be flattered by that. I put a lot of energy into making beautiful spaces and enjoying friends and family, you know, in our home, and entertaining and cooking and doing those kinds of things. On the downside of what they would say about me, I think I can get just too wrapped up in things, just too engaged. I can give too much, not in the sense that, oh, I'm Mother Teresa or anything. It's not that. I can give past the point where it's actually good for them. And I think that that can be a challenge for everybody. I can be impatient. While I'm enormously patient with a screaming child, an elderly person who needs my care, I'm not a person who suffers fools. If you have something to say, it's much better to say it to me and we move on than to try and manipulate situations, because I'm not patient about those kinds of things.
Nice. And obviously you are a very open person and you are easygoing, huh? Because also our contact was very easygoing, although we didn't know each other. So you make it easy for other people.
Thanks. Yeah, I am from California, and that is very Californian. When my husband and I moved from London, when I was expecting Ryan, our son, we moved to Connecticut. One of the first things that people said to me when I met them, "You're not from here, are you?" Because on the East Coast, people do tend to be much more reserved. And then, of course, in Europe, people are far more reserved. Any American will happily tell you their entire life story in 5 minutes on the airplane. And European people, particularly Swiss people, are just aghast. You know, they just like, is this person mentally ill? Why are they telling me all of these things? That is a very American characteristic, really. And we do it with ourselves, which I would, of course, never do in a social situation in Switzerland, in France, in England even. I like being open. It makes life easier. Most people are not left guessing where they stand with me. I will tell you absolutely how I feel about something, because I feel that it's the most fair thing to you and also to me.
Very nice.
Good. When we're younger, we're a little less willing to give people time. And as we get older, I think we see more of the value in the connections.
Yeah. And tell me, what had a big impact in your life? Are there key actions or are there key situations which influenced you, which changed you in a particular way, people or situation?
Right. I think that some of what shaped me really had a lot to do with the way we grew up. So I will mention that it wasn't a stable home. My mother and father divorced when I was very young. My mother had already been married before. She married a couple times more. Those things didn't work out either. So those were not good situations, but we did have our grandparents who were nearby and involved, and that was helpful. But through a lot of really difficult things, I think that those situations did a couple of things. One is they definitely allowed me to understand and to touch people's lives in ways that otherwise would not have been possible, because I wouldn't have understood that pain, that obstacle, that situation. You know?
So that you can understand other people in the same situation,
even different situations. But yes, but empathy for lots of things. So I think that even though if I tell people our childhood story, they are quite aghast. I feel like, well, you know, it's all okay, because honestly, I think growing in and of itself is a painful process. When our bodies are getting bigger as we're growing up, our knees hurt, our shoulders hurt, the bones are expanding. I don't see why it would be any different for our spirits. So that, I think, is very important, because I learned that the ability to really empathize and to touch people and to be open to being touched. And there were many people in those times that influenced and helped me, teachers, as I said before, my grandparents, friends. So that is wonderful, and those are all blessings. And the other thing was that it really taught me that where we have control, and for some reason, as beings, we always want control. I think it's an innate survival instinct. I get that. But in our modern world, of course, there are more and more things that are outside our control. But what I think it taught me was that it was my reaction to things that I could control. So I learned really at a very young age that it's my reaction to things. I can't control what people are doing, but I can choose to be okay in me. I can know that it's not about me. I can know that I am strong. I can know that learning is really fun and playing tennis is really fun. And I can choose to put my time and energy into things that are productive. I think the only reason I mentioned that as a situation that really made a difference in my life is because that's the foundation for all the other things that I did. That gave me the confidence to work hard, I was never focused on being the youngest vice president at United Artists. That was not my goal. It never really even occurred to me. But it happened because I think I was just so energetic and immersed and really focused in the things that I was doing. And we all know, like, we're good at what we work at.
Yeah.
Life is a big thing. There's so much of it. And I mean, I really was very fortunate in my career. I was fortunate even after that, when my son was a teenager, 18 years old, I was able to be his manager. He was a Formula race car driver in Europe. So I was able
to
be his manager for 7 years because I had the business background and the contract negotiation ability and the relationship to help him on those things. That was a great experience overall, hugely, hugely competitive, hugely complicated, obviously dangerous. But it was wonderful to be able to be there and not just cheer him on, but feel an integral part of it. I think that was a big chunk of experience that also taught me to calm down a little bit, take a step back, and spend more time appreciating time itself. You know, he's an adult. He's 28 years old. He's not spending all of his time with us now. I'm not sure I have more to say about any specific situations. As far as people go, Linda, for example, is a dear friend. I love her. She is so authentic and intelligent and caring. She embodies a lot of the qualities that I'd like to see in myself. Some of them I do have, some of them I don't, and that's okay. But I appreciate very much people who are present, that they show up. There are tons of people who don't. And when my husband and I got married, a good friend of ours said something very important, and it was, we're not known by the commitments we make, but we're known by the commitments we keep.
That's true. That's true.
But at the end of the day, do you follow through and do you show up? And Linda is a person who always shows up. And I'm very fortunate because my friends are.
Thank you very much for these deep insights. So my next question is, what is your secret of life? What made you successful? What keeps you going?
That is such a good question. I don't want to say something that sounds hokey and dismissive, But at the end of the day, it really is about passion. It's about commitment. It's about working at your life. It's sad a bit that we don't teach people from very early on that life is a skill. Mm-hmm. Choosing is a skill. We are the total of the choices that we make.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's if we like the shape of our body or how well we get along with our kids, where we live, how we work, so on and so forth. All of those things, in my experience, they're all a function of what we choose. So I would say I've been blessed to most of the time choose wisely. And in the times that I haven't chosen wisely, and believe me, there have been plenty of them, I tried not to knock myself down too much for it. I think that sometimes we have to just get on with it. And I don't mean get on with it in terms of taking a very hurtful situation and just pretending it didn't happen. I know from experience that doesn't work either. But get on with it in that we take the time to accept. Sometimes the biggest resistance to resolving a situation is my own resistance. Mm-hmm. Whereas I just accept that the situation is as it is, then I can find the tools to deal with it. Mm-hmm. If I don't accept it, then I can't do that. So I think a combination of choices, recognizing that we're making choices and that one mistake isn't going to define me forever, mm-hmm. is a good paradigm for success for me. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is, again, approaching the things that I do, whether it's with my work, my son's racing career, my husband and his career and the sport that he needed, taking care of our parents, looking after other family members who need help, showing up for friends, throwing a party, whatever it happens to be. You have to be passionate about it. You have to bring enthusiasm to things. And I think that by enthusiasm and passion, for me, that also comes down to love. And I'm not saying it in the, oh, love the flowers, love the trees, love your neighbors. No, if somebody is crap to you, you back off and you move in a different direction. It's not about that. It's about loving what you're doing, loving the people who you're doing it with, loving maybe not a situation, but recognizing we don't all always love ourselves. I don't always love myself, but there are parts of myself that I always love. It's attaching to those things and using them as your strengths. Mm-hmm. So choices, passion, love, and a tolerance for not always getting it right.
Mm-hmm. Very nice points you have mentioned. So, do you have a recent challenge in life? And if yes, how do you handle it?
Well, I think every life has loads of challenges. So
yes, I agree.
Mine would be no different. The most recent challenge I am facing right now has to do with a sibling who suffers from a serious mental illness. Mm-hmm. She has bipolar disorder, and if she is taking her medications, she's great. And if she's not, things devolve very, very quickly. Once they're on their medication and they start to feel better, they become convinced there's nothing wrong with them. And so they decide not to take their medication. And currently, my sister has done that. So for the last 6 weeks, we've been in a very, very difficult situation. It's not easy for me. I'm incredibly scared because in this state, she can be very unpredictable. She can be violent. We moved her to Colorado Springs and got her a place to live because being homeless isn't a solution. I am a person who likes long-term solutions to long-term problems. So it's been a wonderful 3.5 years that she's been there. So now I'm a bit gutted that here we are in the same situation, and I'm very, very worried. I take a couple of approaches. One is to work very, very hard at centering myself, because I'm useless if I'm just, a ball of tears. So I tend to be the first person that I neglect, don't get the sleep I need, don't get the exercise I need, don't eat right, because I get immersed in solving these problems. And I think that it's not intentional, but I make things look so easy. And it's not that they are, it's just that I try to spend the energy where it's going to have the biggest effect. One thing is to first get myself centered. The other thing I do is that I just begin the process of problem solving by getting as much information and support as I can, because these situations in particular are very difficult, and they're very difficult in our country. We have such poor support for mental illness. It's just abysmal.
Yeah.
She doesn't believe she has a problem. So when we want to get her help, our hands are really tied. Trying to provide more support for her, to get her in a situation where she can make better decisions for herself. And it's not, one of the difficulties, of course, with the whole problem of mental illness, is the stigma of it.
And talking about it, isn't it?
Don't talk about it. And again, there need to be better resources for the people who love and care for people. There are not. If and when she is admitted to a hospital for a mandatory hold, if she's a danger to herself, for example, we're not even allowed to know if she doesn't want us to know. In these situations, the people who are helping you are the people you hate the most, because you think that they are trying to control you, change you, because the world is upside down for her right now. It is a terrible situation, and I'm hopeful, because we have gotten through it before, that we'll be able to get through it again, hopefully with a minimal of pain to her and to the people around her.
That sounds like a real challenge you have there. You have my full empathy. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. You have been mentioning that centering for you was a big help. That brings me to the question, where and when have you met the TRILOGOS method, and what could you benefit from it?
I met Linda in Küsnacht in 2009. And at that time, we knew each other a little bit. I don't read or speak German, so I was not able to become familiar with any of her work in a deep sense. And then I would say about, 6 years ago, I had a friend who was in crisis, and I knew Linda would be able to help this person. And I said, I have this friend who's in a situation and we need a bit of crisis intervention. Can you help? And of course, Linda, being Linda, said yes. I became familiar more with the workings of the method and how Linda works through the work that she did with this individual. And that went on, I would say, for about 6 months and made a complete turnaround. The things that the person was doing that were very self-destructive stopped.
Oh, wow.
The person sought treatment and therapy for their depression, which they hadn't recognized was driving their behavior. So while the method itself couldn't address what came with decades of life and the choices that went along with it, it opened the door to gaining enough perspective to want to be in a better place longer. there was a much greater calm in this person's life than there had been a lot of rage and a lot of lashing out and a lot of risky behavior and some dishonesty too, which was not characteristic of the person.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at that point that I became familiar not just with the real work that Linda was doing, but the impacts of it. And then it was just a few years ago, as TRILOGOS was looking at branching out and translating Linda's work into English, she asked me if I would record and be the voice of TRILOGOS in English. So I said, of course, and then began taking the translated lessons and, going to the recording studio, getting them on tape. And I think now many of those lessons, I don't remember exactly how many we did.
Many, yeah.
Those are all available on different places. I know in trilogos.com and in the US Avenue. And then she most recently did the 4 books that are behind me here, actually. I also recorded those books. So I am very, very familiar with the method. And I would say, too, you can't be exposed to the method in the way that I was experiencing it by reading the materials many, many, many times, and then presenting them in the studio and then listening to them and not absorb what it's all about. That is my experience with the TRILOGOS method.
Perfect. Thank you very much for also putting the books behind you. That's
yes.
nice.
Well, you know what? I think that they're beautiful books. They're beautifully written. They have amazing information in them, and they're very, very relevant.
Wonderful. And now I come already to the last question. So in this process, when you were doing the audiobooks, do you remember a funny story or an anecdote or something like this?
Yeah, I mean, there were several. Probably the funniest thing that happened was that, I spent a lot of time in the recording studio. To do one lesson that is 35 minutes might take us 2 hours because all of the sound levels have to be right. There have to be no interruptions. There's a technical layer of things that needs to happen. It's not just a matter of sitting down and reading it. But because the lessons are quite meditative and they need to be read in a way that opens the mind, the process of doing it can be a bit hypnotic. So I'll just give you an example. Introduction. Human consciousness has continuously shifted over the past centuries, away from the world as it is and toward the world that we have created. This is a little sample. And because it's slow and deliberate, and all of the lessons incorporate guided imageries that take our imaginations to places and invite guides to work with us, it's very, very soothing. And Michael, the owner of the recording studio, fell asleep at the board. He went into a trance and fell asleep.
Lovely story.
That was funny.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Terry, for being so open and so spontaneous and such a sympathetic person. It was a very nice interview. Thank you very much for this.
Nice to meet you.